So a long time ago, Mel Kiper would always say that you have to draft for your division. At the time, it made a little bit of sense. You know, if you got a wide receiver one within your division, then all right, you need a top tier corner to kind of deal with that guy. And the same thing with O lineman and D lineman and stuff like that. But I think you have to make changes to that now slightly, right? For one, it can't just be about your division. You got to start looking at conferences now. If you're one of these top tier teams, you know, your peers are who's going to be in this postseason race, right? For example, if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not really worried about what the Washington Football Wizards do or what the Giants do. I'm looking at the Eagles. I'm looking at 49ers. I'm looking at Lions. I'm looking at Green Bay Packers. You understand? So then on top of that, right, the whole idea of you have to draft for your division. This is what I thought about, right? And all this ties into the Eagles paying DeVonta Smith. Do you need to draft or roster build to counter what your conference opponents are doing, or do you need to draft to try to keep up? Shouts out to my guy Will Steele. He used to always say the Eagles are a team that leaves no stone unturned. If they have a great D lineman, they're going to draft Jordan Davis, they're going to draft Jalen Carter, and then on top of having them with the older veterans that they have in their team, in the middle of the year when they didn't get the results that they wanted from D line, they still went to go get 60-year-old Ndamukong Suh and, you know, all these other 360-pound old men. Why? Because they leave no stone unturned. So instead of playing defense with your conference opponents' moves, do you have to add to your team just to keep up with the race? So what I'm saying about this whole, you know, Eagles, you know, the Eagles didn't re-sign Smith because they're having problems with A.J. Brown. They're just going to keep both of them, and they're just going to retool until they turn into a problem for somebody else. I don't think you just go defense to try to stop them. I don't think, you know, modern football works like that anymore. Not all the way, right? Hey, there's one direct thing to do for this one direct move. You just got to keep building pieces. You just got to roster build and roster build and roster build. For example, if you're the 49ers and you have the best run game in football, it'll be weird for you to just sit down and be like, all right, we got the best run game in football, let's add nothing else to it. Nah, they say, all right, we got the best run game, the best run scheme, offensive play caller, let's add the best running back to that. Then they go and get Christian McCaffrey, and it's just a match made in heaven. And then they go to a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy at quarterback. You can have whatever thought and opinion you want of Brock Purdy. You know, that team is going to live and die through its run game. So I said all this to say, you know, there are some Niner fans out there that may be worried about, okay, well, we got Debo. Maybe, you know, there's some problems with, you know, re-signing Ayuk. Or if you're a Bengals fan, right, you got Jamar Chase, like, hey, man, what are we going to do with T. Higgins or whatever, right? I think what the Eagles are doing, I think they're setting this tone of, hey, if we're going to be your playoff opponent, if we're going to be your conference ops, you have to be able to keep up with us, right? So yeah, man, you know, it's not like they're re-signing Smith just to get rid of Brown. Like I said earlier, they're re-signing Smith to keep Brown. And look, can I be real for a minute? I don't think it's unrealistic for them to, you know, then go and sign somebody else or then go and draft somebody else to help that wide receiver room even more. And I know this because once upon a time, the name was Julio Jones that was the help being brought in. But Julio Jones is 90 years old and he was injury prone, and he did a little bit of something, but maybe like a younger guy could be, you know, better for him. I don't think that the Eagles draft wide receiver early or anything like that. You know, they got cornerback issues, whether they believe it or not. They probably look at linebacker in this draft, but at some point in this draft, I think even they're going to look for wide receiver help just to add and continue to build. Because if you're a small team rebuilding, yes, you can kind of draft evenly and just whatever. But if you're one of those teams at the top, then you're drafting to keep up with everybody else. And, you know, even look at the Seahawks and what they did, right? You got a DK Metcalf and you have a Lockett. Hey, man, we're not just going to sit on the idea that we got two wide receivers that we think are really good. We're going to go and draft another one. We're going to go and draft Jackson and Jigba. And it ain't like they drafted in Jigba to get rid of anybody else. Nah, they're just going to run three wide receivers out there. So now what you got to do is you got to look at what the Eagles are doing, because I do think they are setting the tone a bit, right? You got to look at them and go, man, there's no way I can't re-sign Brandon Ayuk. There's no way the Cowboys fooling around with their wide receiver one, making me sick. But there's no way, we could just rest on the idea that we just got CeeDee Lamb. Like Brandon Cooks in inadequate wide receiver 2 situation. If not, then we need to go look at wide receiver. And that's why I think this draft is super important, because if there's a time where rookie, wide receivers can come in and help day one, now we're in that time. We're in that era. Back in the day, wide receiver everybody was just trying to get that Calvin Johnson guy. You had to be a certain size, or you had to be this, or we wouldn't even, consider using you. But modern football is not about what you can't do, but it's much, much more about what you can do. And the 49ers are a prime example of that. There are a lot of teams that pass on Deebo Samuel because he just didn't do a lot of regular wide receiver things. Cool. Well, what is he doing in college? Okay, well, he's getting the ball short, and he's running over people, and he's real hard to tackle. Perfect. And the San Francisco 49ers, they're incredibly smart for what they're doing. They just take Deebo Samuels and they just don't ask him to do a whole bunch of weird stuff that it doesn't look like he would be good at, and they'll be fine. And then you go add another yak guy in Brandon Ayuk, and you add another yak guy in Jennings out of Tennessee, super yak guy at Tennessee, right? So in college, right? Not Tennessee Titans, but the University of Tennessee. So I'm just up here. I'm watching how it's all being built. And then look, you watch the Lions too, right? That's another example too that we could just lean on. The Lions are just all right. They draft Jameson Williams, and then they go in, St. Brown and all that. Then they go and get Laporta. They sneakily get Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs, and they made all those picks because they invested in the offensive line early. The Eagles invested in the offensive line early. Man, these are super powers of your conference, right? So yeah, you can be like, all right, I'm just gonna draft D linemen to deal with their O linemen. Hell nah, dog. You got to build an O line so that your run game can be comparable with their run game. I think, once you get to playoff football, run game is going to matter. Defense is going to matter. But what's the best way to try to put stress on defense? The old adage, man, you need horses. Just add as many horses to offense as you possibly can. The Eagles would have been foolish to just, all right, y'all, DeVonta Smith, 5th-year option. We're just gonna move on after him and just keep drafting. That'll be foolish. You get your players, you establish a base, and then you build on top of that. Which is probably why Cowboys fans pissed off. The Cowboys haven't done nothing but just move on from guys. The Cowboys just move on from depth. We haven't done anything to replenish the roster. There's nothing wrong with just moving away from guys. The Eagles and Ford, they move away from guys all the time, but they're constantly replenishing. Back to my point, I got distracted. So the whole idea of, hey man, this is probably, what is this going to do for the wide receiver draft, right? There's going to be some teams, as I pull up Tankathon here, and if I feel like it, I might even pull up Tankathon for y'all. There are going to be some teams that are in this draft window or whatever, and what they're going to do. There we are. All right, so here we go. We got Tankathon pulled up, and the first question you have to ask is, which of these teams do not need wide receiver at all? And that's a cute notion, but I don't think there's a such thing as a team that doesn't need wide receiver at all. Like, some of these teams need wide receiver much badly than others, much badly. Some of these teams need wide receivers worse than others, better than others, but there's not a team on this list that, for one, couldn't use an extra wide receiver, but even if they have a top tier wide receiver option, they can still add to what they have in their wide receiver room. Like the Bears, for example, Keenan Allen, fantastic player, DJ Moore, fantastic player, but what's stopping Chicago from going, hey man, let's just add another player, like let's just add somebody else to this equation, right? Those other guys, they're older players for sure, but hey man, let's just load the deck. Why not load the deck? If you're the Vikings, in which first they need a quarterback because they're over here being goofy, but hey man, you got Jordan Addison, you got Justin Jefferson. What's stopping you from just adding another guy? I mean, like, why not? The Saints ain't really got receivers, but hey, if you're the Vegas Raiders, Okay, if you the Vegas Raiders, Devontae Adams, they draft somebody to go along with him. I think there are so many wide receivers in this class. Let me just get my wide receiver list, and my rankings are definitely coming soon. It's so many here are the wide receivers I think can line up and play for you right now. Like they line up, whether they are wide receiver 1, 2, 3, whatever, but they could just play quality starting snaps for you right now. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, A.D. Mitchell, Troy Franklin. We still going, by the way. Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall for sure. Jermaine Burton, Keon Coleman, one of my favorites. Jalen Polk, another one of my favorites. Xavier Legette, another one of my favorites. Jalen McMillan, Xavier Worthy, Tez Walker. All these dudes playing for you right now. We're not done. Brandon Rice, Malachi Corley, Jacob Cowing, Javon Baker, Malik Washington. All these wide receivers can do something for you. And, you know, this isn't the old days where, like, all right, your wide receiver 3 was a rotational dude that probably got, I don't know, 20 catches a year or something like that. Man, if you're a wide receiver 3 now, man, you can get a 700-yard year in one of these offenses, depending on who your wide receiver 1 is, if there's a wide receiver 2 or not, depending on how much volume the tight end gets. The Eagles can very much so, and I just say them because we just talking about DeVonta Smith right now, right? They can draft Jamari Thrash right now, and he'll get 40 catches in that offense, assuming that they get back, you know, to their glory offense or whatever. He can get 40 catches in that offense. So what I'm saying is, you should leave no stone unturned in this thing. And the Eagles are a team, regardless of what you think about them, regardless of what you think about the quarterback. This ain't the time or the place for that. There's plenty footage of what I think about their quarterback or whatever. The one thing you can give them credit for is that they leave no stone unturned. Whether they got faith in their quarterback or not, they're gonna put pieces around them. They're going to put another running back in that backfield next to him. They're going to put all the wide receivers they can. They're going to super invest into the offensive line. And if you're a team that's directly competing conference, right? We just talking about playoff stuff, right? If you're another team that's directly competing with them, the one thing that you cannot do, if they're doing everything they can to get better, you can't sit on your hands, man. You cannot sit on your hands. But I don't know. That's all I got for y'all, man. I just wanted to talk about that, man. Just once again, the Eagles are just setting the tone. They're just constantly making improvements. They're constantly making changes or whatever. They're making upward changes. They're not just doing stuff just to be doing stuff. They're making upward changes. But what I think that's going to do is that's going to put some fire under the conference opponents. Cowboys, Lions, I don't want to say nobody from the Falcons. We could talk about, Falcons, Falcons, let's have a conversation. You got Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Kirk Cousins throwing the football, Drake London. They got some other, complimentary wide receivers over there. But what's stopping the Falcons from just drafting wide receiver in the second round? The Falcons can walk away with damn Keon Coleman, Florida State in the second round at the top of the second round here. And they add to that list, dog. There's no such thing as too many good players. That's all I got for y'all. This was just on my mind. I wanted to share with you. Y'all hold it down. Peace.